Welcome to this series designed to take my SN95 Mustang and myself to the absolute max. There's going to be several real challenges to see exactly how good a $3,000 Ford Mustang is at the most epic of cross-country road trips. And this is a Mustang that I bought about a year and a half ago to take drifting. Unfortunately, that requires a lot of time and effort, and the videos don't really accumulate that many views. So instead of burying myself deeper into that right now, I have this loaded up and ready to take me on a 2.5-week vacation across the United States. And to make matters a little bit worse, I don't have any sponsors on this trip. It's just my tax refund and compulsive behavior really moving this thing forward. However, I just started a Patreon to, one, help fund this project, but also to help fund other things that aren't just car reviews in the future. So if you'd like to support this more creative direction that I'm trying to take for some of these videos, please do subscribe to my Patreon, where there'll be a few other perks like access to live streams, behind the scenes stuff, along with even a one-on-one phone call if that's something that you want. I'll link that below. So this is a 1996 Ford Mustang GT. It's the first model year with the 4.6 liter V8. This was a surprisingly reliable engine. My model here though it was a drift car for a reason. So the speedometer doesn't work. The odometer also doesn't work. ABS, it has it, but it doesn't work. This technically should have an OBD2 port, and it does, but it doesn't work, which means that I can ignore my problems, but they might still be there and I just don't know about it. And I checked all the fuses before you ask. It's a mostly stock car, except I did recently put on a new suspension. It has an angle kit now, so the steering isn't as sloppy as it was, and it has a little bit more turn to it. The unfortunate part is that it's rubbing against something if I turn it too tight. From the factory, it was making about 215 horsepower. This one has a cold air intake and an exhaust, which might compensate for the horsepower lost over the years.
Or at least I'm hoping it does. This thing is still a drift car in progress, so no hydro e-brake and just a limited slip differential. The first stop is going to be Eureka Springs, Arkansas, on our way to our first challenge in Texas against my good friend Jay, who also happens to be a musician and a barber, someone I am in desperate need of soon before I start to look like I have a best friend named
So the first thing I did when I got the car was put on new wheels and tires, because this thing was rocking the trailer park specials. The next thing I did was put in a racing seat with a mounted fire extinguisher here at the bottom. The seat, because the stock seat was literally sloping and it felt like it was giving me scoliosis after 30 minutes of driving it. And the fire extinguisher, well, that was for tech inspection, as is the tow points at the front and rear.
In addition to the aforementioned suspension and angle kit, the latter of which required me to get rid of the sway bar up front. To compensate for this, I had to replace the already stiff aftermarket springs with even stiffer springs. As you can imagine, this beats you up worse than mentioning Jada Smith's name in a joke. Oh no, I didn't mean it. I was playing.
And for longevity purposes, I did put carbon clutches in the rear differential. So one thing that I noticed as I was doing all of these is the car's still actually drivable. In fact, I would say it's more drivable than it was when it first got it. The seat is more comfortable, the steering is much better, the suspension feels safe, whereas the previous suspension, under stressful situations, it was a complete handful to keep the car on the road. And I really got a true lesson into why Mustangs have the reputation they do, which also, technically, this is a classic car. I would say this is a classic car cross-country tour, but I don't think most people look at the SN95 Mustang and think Americana. I think this thing more has the image of guys that try to date high schoolers.
Unfortunate associations aside, I've begun to notice a few things after 150 miles into our journey.
The interior of the Mustang has a cacophony of plastic materials rubbing against one another. There's other creaking and rattling, and yeah, the missing door panel there probably doesn't help very much either. But the worst thing is probably the engine noise. It drones. In fact, I've slowed down a little bit to about 60 miles per hour so that you guys can hear me. But I've noticed my coolant gauge hasn't moved very much. We're staying just below the normal amount, which is actually what this car likes to do. The thermostat might be broken and letting too much coolant in at all times, or the temperature gauge could just be a little off. Who knows? And after my ownership with the Mustang, I pretty much know how fast I'm going so long as I'm in 5th gear, just by looking at the tachometer. But I do really wish the cruise control still worked. It had it at some point, but now I can just kind of play with the buttons when I get bored, so that's still a feature. I think the best plan of attack for getting this thing across the country and back is drive it like a truck. And that's what I intend on doing. The only unfortunate part is that the suspension is not like a truck. You feel every little bump, everywhere, all the time. And sometimes I move over into the left lane just because the right lane tends to be a little bit worse. But whenever I do that, within 3.6 seconds, there's a Ford F-350 with tow mirrors, so I'm pretty much stuck here. But I guess this is kind of what I've signed up for.
I soon came to my first full fuel up at the largest gas station I think I've ever seen. Tacky as it was, the faucets are cool. As my trip continued, I realized that my hearing was beginning to diminish. To protect my ears from a catless, modified exhaust, noise-canceling earbuds became a must. The road might be gross, but since I'm alone, I found that belting out lyrics helps pass the time.
Galileo, 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 not to be dramatic, but I wanna die this big. And the weeks leading up to this, I've spent most of my time kind of just fretting about, oh, is the Mustang gonna make it? And also questioning my sanity, like, am I going to be able to tolerate this noise and the seat for this long? And granted, I'm not very comfortable right now, but another thing that I completely forgot about was this is really not safe. Not at all. I'm like looking at this door and I can see, the sheet metal on the outside there, and I know I don't have any side airbags or curtain airbags, and I don't have ABS. And safety cages have evolved a ton in the past 25 years, 26 years that this car has been out. So actually, really, the Fox body Mustang that underpins the SN95 essentially is from 1979. So it's kind of made me very keen on, staying in between two semis, or really being in anyone's blind spot. But at the same time, that's just, I'm not sure if you can, it doesn't say whether that's like a adult store, but it's just called the Pleasure Zone, and it's just a purple, dingy looking building. It seems like the last place that I'd look for pleasure, I guess.
But anyone who's done interstate travel in the US knows about these stores, along with the many billboards telling you that you're probably going to hell. After several hours and a couple fill-ups, I find myself closer to my first destination. And finally, the road starts to get a little windy on our way to the campground. The Mustang suspension and angle kit keep the car uber composed and tight on the road, with the racing seat holding me in my place as well.
Now, up until this point, we've just been driving this on the highway, which you really get beat up by the suspension and the seat here, but those two things contribute to making this such an enjoyable experience compared to the stock car out on roads like these.
Night closes in on me as I roll up to the campsite and fire up the world's cheapest stove.
All right, so we made it to the campsite. Here's the Mustang. There's the tent that I've already done, and that definitely didn't take me a full 30 minutes to do. And we're gonna go gourmet on this shit. And you might ask, how are you gonna cook that? You got no firewood. This guy. Also, I am literally the only person out here, so every time I hear something, I think that a bear is coming up behind me. So, forgive me, but see, it just kind of comes out like this. We might find out why it's $18. And there is our throttle, if you will. Probably just gonna, oh, my back, oh. I'm gonna turn up the gas a little bit, light it. Okay, that's not good. I have no other plans in terms of food. Yes. Just, that doesn't seem too secure, actually. One nice thing about camping when it's cold as shit, there's no bugs. just bears.
I learned after this night that it's best to operate the stove at full steam.
I think lukewarm might be generous.
But I'm not hungry at least. Sleeping in the tent is mostly painless.
But my one thing to add, these sleeping bags that are like rated for, 30 degrees and below or whatever, I think they just mean you're going to survive if it's 30 degrees or below, because I have a whole nother blanket stuffed in there like by my feet, and my toes are still numb.
Making oatmeal through just boiling water was much easier. Packing everything up turns out to be the most annoying part.
Ow. So now I actually get to enjoy Eureka Springs, Arkansas. I see a lot of references trying to make it seem like a Swiss town, which I could see like an American who's never been to Europe like myself kind of coming into this and being like, ooh, lots of hills and old small buildings. Well, I'll let you guys be the judge of it yourself. All I do know is that the roads are pretty nice. I do like the roads.
The roads continue to get more zesty as I get closer to town, which turns out to actually fulfill its reputation.
This does look kind of foreign to America. This kind of feels like driving through an amusement park, but a really authentic one. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Why does it want me to go up this? Okay, yeah, this feels foreign. This is the tiniest street. Like, I can't even see over these things. Oh, they got art there. Aha! Oh my gosh. Oh, that doesn't sound good. I know what that was. That was scraping the exhaust.
After confirming nothing was too damaged, I hiked around the town and saw what was once a school until it was closed down, almost destroyed just to be saved, converted to an arts education place of sorts, and then struck by lightning and consumed by fire. The whole town really has some bad luck with lightning. After walking around some more, eating at a local diner, and admiring the foreign looks of Eureka Springs, it's time to get back into disgusting. On the road to Texas, I'm traveling through Oklahoma. The mostly remote rural places I'm going through remind me of 5 things. Cows, more cows, 15% ethanol gas with lower octane, and poverty. While I know this is a tangent, and believe me, there are many ignored problems in America all over, it's sad that even the rural places here that provide most of the food in the US still make up 91% of the counties with the highest rates of food insecurity, something that really became prevalent around this area of the South. After a gas stop in Oklahoma, I checked the oil, contemplated the afterlife, and made it to Texas next, where I got to meet up with Jay to hang out and conduct a very important Mustang challenge. Before this, he gave me a much needed haircut in record time.
Scoot for some manners.
Hey, what'll it be? Hope you like it. If you don't, I don't care.
Right now, gas mileage is a high priority, especially if you're going on a road trip. So, you might think that getting a 90s Mustang with a V8 and bringing it on a 6,000 mile journey is a dumb idea when it comes to finances. However, I think it's a little bit more fuel efficient than you might expect because it doesn't have to work as hard, or at least that's the theory. And to help me put this to the test, I have my good friend Jay with me here today.
So this is my Kia Forte 2017, 2-liter engine, gets 38 miles to the gallon. Acceleration, nothing too crazy, just does what I need it to do, really.
So today we're gonna travel to an infamous barbecue spot that I have known about for a couple years now, but have never gotten a chance to try it. It's called Goldie's. So Jay and I today are taking the same routes, and he's gonna drive the way that, a lot of people end up doing, which is not really caring about gas mileage. And I'm going to drive rather conservatively, and we're just gonna see what we get. And honestly, I think it's something that a lot of people forget about. You can drive a nice V8 muscle car, but you just can't drive like an ass.
That is, if you're looking to not pay for your sins at the gas station. Our procedure today: use the same pumps, fill each car until it stops, take the same route to Goldie's and back, which comes out to 65 miles, and see how much fuel is used. After having to restart the test due to Google Maps changing my route and me not focusing.
Google Maps, if you're listening, you can go directly to hell.
Well, okay, it was probably my fault, so I eventually forgave Google.
So now we're back on the highway, this time with our routes properly synced up. I topped off the gas again. The barbecue place will likely be out of food by the time we get there,
because they are only open 3 days a week from 11 until they run out of food, which can happen in just 2 hours oftentimes. Today was not that way, and oh my god, easily the best barbecue I've ever had. I almost want to go vegan now as a sign of respect for the pig that provided us with this food. The building looks like a juiced mobile home and the decor is endearingly cheap, but there's free beer and super friendly staff. If you are remotely near Goldie's southwest of Dallas, go try it. On the way back, we encountered some traffic and Jay beat me to the pump by a decent margin.
All right, so if you drive like a grandmother, we'll call it 2.2 gallons. We get about 29.5. Kia, fill up. Here we go. All right. Okay, this is actually closer than I thought. Ah, damn, still beat me by a decent margin. Well, I guess that's kind of what we were expecting.
So Jay and the Forte were easily victorious, despite him driving with no regard for gas mileage and me driving like the lives of my children depended on it. Yes, only doing 65 miles means this test is almost as inconclusive as a 9-year-old boy's assessment on girls, but I will add that the Mustang has been able to nearly recreate this mileage consistently on the road while cruising between 70 and 75, so these results have been halfway verified. This was rated at 25 miles per gallon when new, so my conclusion: a project car or track monster like my Mustang can be much more efficient than we give them credit for, but a car built around being cheap to run will do just that. My other takeaway: you can drive a neglected, archaic car modified for track driving over 1,000 miles. Next week, I'll answer the more important questions like, is this quicker than the fast enough NC MX-5 Miata? Objectively, how comfortable is it? Is it possible for me to fix it on the road? And can I eat jalapenos and spicy chips? Subscribe and hit the bell for notifications to see that as soon as possible. And check out my Patreon if you really like this type of content. Thank you. Now, only like 5,000 miles more to go.